What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me is Jordan Ellis. Jordan, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. This past weekend, we had a fight night. Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva. Meant to be Anderson Silva's final fight, although he didn't seem convinced it would be his final. But obviously, this event was pretty... I'd say the main card was quite stacked with fighters who have really propelled themselves into notoriety in 2020, right? I mean, you had Kevin Holland on there, had Maurice, Greene, Bryce Mitchell, fighters who have been active, fairly active anyway, in 2020 and really starting to build a name for themselves. But at the top of the card, we had the Hall versus Silva fight. And what did you think of that?
Um, it weren't a great fight. It really weren't, and I think I'm disappointed in Uriah Hall. He was made up with that win, and I think that shows you his ceiling and his mentality, because I don't think that should be a win you're rolling around the floor crying about. I know Dan Silva, it's a good name to have on your resume, but at this point, I think Uriah Hall should have took him out in the first round. Silva's a shadow of his former self, and he was in there, and he might have been nicking rounds and winning that fight on the cards. I'm not sure how the judges actually scored it, but it was closer than it should have been. And Hall's one of these fighters who we've seen all the way through the Ultimate Fighter till now, and he's so frustrating because he's so talented. He's got all this power, and he's got everything it takes to be a champion, but he refuses to throw, and he's got that nervousness in the cage, and he's standing opposite Anderson Silva, and he's worried to throw. But once he did, the knockout came. But in my opinion, he should have been throwing earlier, and he should have been trying to make a statement, and I'm going to take this guy out, this legend out in one round, and then you can start talking. But right now, I don't think he's any better off. It reminds me of Weidman's win over Akhmedov, where no one's going to be too worried about this performance. I don't think anyone's going to be looking at Hall thinking, oh, he's a proper contender, because he's not yet. But it's a good name to get on your record. He got the finish in the end, but I weren't particularly impressed.
Yeah, well, that was the thing I couldn't really understand coming out of this fight. I couldn't get if Silva looked really good and looked like he was like where he used to be, maybe not where he was once, but he did look pretty good. But was that because he was facing Hall, who just wouldn't throw, and he was very hesitant, especially in those early rounds? And you saw at the end of the third, when he started throwing, he put Anderson Silva down. It looked like it was going to be done at the end of that third. And so obviously coming to the fourth, he did get the finish. And, I mean, he just came out aggressive and put him away like he probably should have done from the start. But that was the thing. I couldn't tell if Silva looked good or if Hall just was being very hesitant. And hearing it from you and hearing it from other media sources as well, maybe it was a bit of Hall not going out there and putting on the show that he should have on that platform. But nonetheless, I think a win over Silva is good for him, and I think he'll probably end up getting the fights he was going to get beforehand, wasn't he? Because he was going to get Romero, he was going to get Jacare. The problem is, you can't go out there and spend 3 rounds feeling out Romero or Jacare. You might get away with one with Romero, but you can't do that against these higher level guys, because they're coming out there to take your head off. Silva's another fighter like him that will like to feel out their opponent and look for the counters and try and work out his plans of victory, whereas someone like Romero is going to come out there and swing and try and put you out.
Yeah, I just think what I was saying before. No one's going to be worried about Uriah Hall. There's no evolution, I don't think, in his ability. This is the same Uriah Hall we've been seeing for years. He might have a 3-fight win streak, but it's not the best opposition. As soon as he steps up again, I feel like he will get taken out again. So whether it's against Romero or Jacare or anyone like that, I see him losing. I don't see any progression, and that's what I wanted to see. But he's not the youngest, chap himself. I think he's 36, 37 now. So it's now or never. And I think for me, this fight kind of solidified that it's going to be never. He's not going to reach that, height. And I don't want to be a dampener on the biggest win of his career. But I just feel like guys like Jared Cannonier did what they had to do. You take out a 45-year-old man in one round. You make it look what it is. Where Hall, I think he struggled, and I feel like if he didn't land that punch at the end of the third round, he might have lost the decision. He needed the punch to give himself confidence, whereas other fighters who are true contenders, they'll go in there and be confident, I'm going to take this guy out, where Hall just doesn't have it. And I think, whoever he faces next, I expect them to lose if it's one of the top guys.
Well, you think about like Anderson Silva's fight with Israel Adesanya. He had 3 rounds of that fight, and it was quite competitive. And it seemed to be because they both had similar styles at the time. And I don't know if maybe the respect factor came into that, which like maybe Israel didn't want to go out there and put out his idol or the person who brought him into the sport. I'm sure that was his goal, but maybe in the octagon he had a bit of jitters to do that. And I don't know if it's the same with Hall, but it seems to be a consistent thing for Hall where he's always had trouble mentally keeping himself in the fight. We look at the Paulo Costa fight. He did really well in that, and he was smashing Paulo Costa with his jab and really leading the dance in that one. And what ended up doing him in the fight was his mental broke down after he got tagged and he ended up getting finished. And so I feel like that's his biggest issue is his mental. I don't know if in this fight it was the same because in this fight it just seemed he just didn't get started. And he definitely has the skills. That's the thing. I mean, even on The Ultimate Fighter, he had the skills. He was the favorite on that season from memory, and I'm pretty sure Gaslam beat him in the finale. But he's a talented fighter. He's got all the skills in the world. He just I don't know if it's a mental thing. I can't really tell you what he does next and if he gets a win or a loss, but I would like to see him versus someone around the level of competition that he's been fighting at the moment and where he is. Maybe the Weidman fight's a good fight for him, in my opinion. I don't want to see him in there with Yoel Romero. I just think that's an awful fight for him, and I think Romero is going to try and look to make a statement after his last loss. So I just think if you're trying to build Hall up, which I don't know if the UFC are doing, like you say, he's a bit older and he's been around a while, you give him someone like Chris Weidman. You don't give him someone like Yoel Romero or Jacare Souza.
Yeah, and I think Dana White said it all after the fight that he was disappointed in Hall as much as he was disappointed himself for letting Silva fight. So I don't think Hall's someone who's going to get a big push from the UFC anymore. He's had his chance. When he was on the Ultimate Fighter, he was going viral. He was scoring huge knockouts. He was the guy, and he's just let that chance go. And I honestly don't think he's in the favour with White anymore. So I think they're just going to match him up against whoever, and they're going to be rooting for whoever he's facing. If it's Joel, if it's Weidman, I don't think they see him as a potential title contender anymore. And in my pick, I picked Hall, but I weren't confident in that pick, and that tells you everything you need to know about my opinion on Hall, because I should be confident because Silva's done at this point. Silva's, he's done UFC level anyway. He might go off and, fight somewhere else, but at this level, he's done. And to not be sure if someone who's ranked in the top 10 can beat Silva at this point, it tells you what you need to know about Hall.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll move away from Hall so much and the fight, I guess, and we'll move on to Silva's career. Do you think this is the last time he competes? Because I know in the post-fight interview, he seemed hesitant to say that it would be the last time he competed. And he's kind of voiced in the press before the fight that he's looking to fight after this, whether it be in the UFC or outside the UFC. Do you think we see him fight again? And where would you like to see him go if he doesn't fight in the UFC again? Which I don't think he will.
He's got one fight left on his UFC contract, but I don't see him fighting that out. I expect the UFC to let him go, and I expect him to carry on fighting elsewhere. I think he's a guy who loves fighting, and for me, he doesn't take a lot of damage. He's not getting beat from pillar to post by these guys. He got tagged a few times and he went down, but that was it really. He was in the fight. So I feel like he can fight on and not take a lot of damage. And even if he was taking a lot of damage, I feel like the money that's going to come at him now from different promotions is, it's interesting. I feel like he could go to one, maybe fight Vitor. Vitor's right there, and, it looks like TRT Vitor's back as well, so maybe Silva can get on some TRT and we can have a bit of a monster fight. I feel like there's other options for him. If he wants to fight, I'm not someone to push someone into retirement because they've got to make money. He's 45-year-old. What's he meant to do? Sit on the couch for the rest of his life? If he wants to fight and they can get him the right opponents, we spoke about this previously about, kind of a Legends League or an unofficial Legends Veterans League. He can be in that. He can be competitive against certain opponents, and I think that's what he needs to do. He needs to pick his opponents now, but it's not going to be in the UFC.
What do you think about if he went to Bellator? Do you reckon he had a chance against Gegard Mousasi, or you reckon he's not going to make a championship run?
No, I honestly think Mousasi would be one of the best middleweights in the UFC, so I just don't think there's any worth in that. I think he needs to go to Asia and, Ryzen or One or somewhere like that, and he can pick his opponents and you can just, or you could just float about. I heard someone else saying that they think he's going to fight the winner of Tyson Roy Jones in a boxing match. So if Roy Jones wins that boxing match, Silva could be one of the prime candidates to face him next. So It's it's interesting times for Silva, and that's why I just don't see him retiring. I still think his name has a lot of value on it, and who's he to turn down millions of dollars, pounds, or whatever it is, for fun fights.
Yeah, well, we'll move on from the main event because I think we covered that enough. And we'll go to the co-main, which was Thug Nasty, Bryce Mitchell taking on Andre Touchy-Feely. I thought this was an awesome fight. I didn't expect it to be so competitive. I thought it would be very one-sided for Mitchell. I thought he'd be able to take Feely down at will and just out-grapple him. But even in that second round, you could see Feely was coming back and it looked very competitive. What are your thoughts on that fight?
Yeah, it was a really fun fight, for a fight that's predominantly grappling, and we all know UFC fans just like people to bleed. So it was a fun fight, and Mitchell, he's just relentless with that takedown. He just doesn't stop with it, and he was mixing in his strikes well, but Feely was just a nightmare on the ground to like keep down. He kept reversing position, and he's obviously very talented, Feely, but it was all defensive talent for him, so the fight got away from him. But as long as he was in there, he was going to keep gaming. I think these two could have went all night and just kept swapping position, and the fight would have never ended. But I think Mitchell, that's a brilliant win for him, the biggest of his career. Feely will be disappointed because he took out Charles Jourdain last time. That was a prospect. Here's another one, and he could have been the prospect killer. But Mitchell, he did a job on him in the end. He was just a bit too much, and Feely is kind of getting that tag as kind of a gatekeeper right now, and I'm sure he's not into that. So he'll want to come back and get a big win. But Mitchell, he should be fighting ranked guys after this. It was a really good win.
Yeah, I don't think Philly's stock really dropped too much in my eyes anyway, because I thought that Mitchell would be able to just like stomp him for 3 rounds. I thought it'd be very dominant. But his ability to scramble out of positions and get himself back to his feet, I actually think his stock goes up, in my opinion. As far as the ranking stuff goes, of course, he's going to go down. And yeah, Mitchell, I think, came into this at number 15. So he should be fighting ranked guys next. I would love to see him fight Ryan Hall, although I don't think that's a favorable matchup for him. But I would love to see that fight just because two really high-level grapplers. But I honestly just see that one ending with Ryan Hall landing a heel hook like he does to everyone else. But could be a fun fight. As far as Feely goes, there's plenty of good matchups for him, especially being that borderline 15 in the featherweight division. There's plenty of people out there for him. But the biggest talking point of this fight we haven't even covered was the camo shorts. How's that? Reebok finally did it. They gave him his camo shorts.
I don't know why it took so long. Just make him add a pair of camo shorts and keep him happy. I think there's a load of fighters who want to wear camo shorts. He was just very vocal about it, and then as soon as that fight was over, he started ranting about masks as well. So he always seems to be one of them guys who's got a lot to say, but he's a fun guy to listen to, especially with the accent. And for someone from the UK, that's like a typical Texas accent or whatever it is, Southern accent, and it's just it's fun to listen to, and he's a funny guy, and I think he's got everything it takes to be a champion. So he's got the personality, he's got the talent, he's very young, so he's going to be a fun one to watch and listen to over the next few years.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he does next. Before that, we had the heavyweights, Maurice Greene taking on Greg Hardy. In a fight that I probably did favour Hardy heavy in this one, as much as I hate to say it, because his antics outside the cage. But he seems to be getting better. He just seems to be improving every time he fights. And I know a lot of people watch to see Greg Hardy lose, but God, he's just looked good, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a proper, he's a worthwhile person to talk about now, where when he first came, he was on main cards and it was all unjustified. I think beating Maurice Greene is a respectable win. It's a really good win. I think he did himself justice when he fought Volkov as well, and he's picked up a few good wins now. So you've got to respect him as a proper UFC fighter now. He is. I wouldn't say he's a contender yet, but he's a worthwhile name. So speaking about away from his NFL career and all that stuff, the fact that he's actually famous already, just as a pure fighter, he deserves some credit off that win because I think he dominated start to finish, and it just looked like a matter of time from the first belt till when he got the knockout.
Well, I think the biggest issue he's going to have in the cage is his gas tank doesn't seem to be the greatest. You could see after the first round he was very fatigued, so he's quite lucky that he got Greene out of there and early in the second, because I think if that had gone to a third and Greene was still upright and conscious, that could have been a really competitive fight, and Greene could have probably found a finish himself because Hardy was gassing. There's no doubt in that.
Yeah, and when he's speaking to them, was it Bisping post fight? it was a bit worrying listening to his interview because he's going,
Mm.
he's clearly got asthma because he's struggling to breathe even 5 minutes after the fight's finished. So that's something to look out for. But if you're a heavyweight, you can take the gas tank out of it. And Ngannou, how good's his gas tank? We're not even sure because he's had about a minute's worth of fight time in his last 4 fights. So if you're that much of a puncher and you haven't got the best gas tank in heavyweight, just go and take people out. And Hardy's doing that, and I'm looking forward to seeing him step up. I don't know where they take him next. Does he go back into the rankings after this? I don't know what happens, but I feel like he's on the edge of something, quite good at the minute. He's on the edge of fighting, significant names. Maybe the winner Arlovsky against Tanaboza is a good fight for him. There's a lot of options out there, somewhere around that
That was
level.
the one I was literally just about to mention. I clicked over to my other tab to see who was fighting Tanaboza. I think the winner of that fight is a great fight for Greg Hardy, and it's definitely winnable for any guy that ends up in it out of those three. But it's keeping him where he should be in terms of competition, because the last thing you want to do is throw him up in the rankings and give him someone like Cyril Gain or someone like that, and then he just gets smashed, and then where do you go from there again? I think you keep him around the level he's at now with winnable fights and just see how he's going, because like I said, he is definitely improving. You can see from his first fight to now, he's definitely improved.
Yeah, 100%. And as I said, originally he weren't worth talking about, but right now he is. That was a good win. Aside from everything else, you might not like him, but that was a good win, a good, respectable heavyweight. He just beating Maurice Greene, and on to the next one.
Absolutely. And before that, we had Kevin Holland fighting for the fourth time in 2020 against Charlie Ontiveros, who I obviously had no clue who he was. It was his debut, I'm pretty sure. And I had never seen him fight, but I saw the karate stance when he come out, or his taekwondo or whatever it was, and he threw that axe kick, and I was like, "Jeez, this is gonna be a tough fight for Holland. Like, what's he gonna do?" Then Holland went to his grappling pedigree and just dominated him. And obviously, he got that TKO finish from slamming him, and I think it was a verbal tap, if I'm not wrong, when Ontiveros said his neck was, or his back or something, had some problems. So it was a bit of an anticlimactic finish, but Kevin Holland's grappling pedigree is pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. Charlie Ontiveros, he didn't really have a chance in this one. He even come on under the weight. I think he come in at like 182 or something like that. So that's a sign that I've took this on last minute, and I'm probably a 170 fighter if I get given the chance. So, but he was tall, he was rangy, and then when he's standing there, he didn't look that much smaller. But as soon as Holland gets a hold of you, and he's just got this unorthodox, bulldog-like approach where he'll just rag you to the mat, and you can fall in a funny way when people do that, and that's what happened. And it looks like he hurt his neck, and just glad he's okay, because it's a worrying thing when someone's getting taken out on a stretcher like that, after not much prep. So good win for Holland. I really want to see him step up now. I don't think he should be fighting UFC debut, since he beat Darren Stewart in a really good fight. I feel like he should be on the cusp of top 15 now, fighting proper contenders. I do see Kevin Holland as a contender. If you're going to go and call out Izzy, who's sitting the cage side, you shouldn't be fighting UFC debutants. And that's, I know he's taking them last minute, and all credit to him. It's 4 fights, 4 wins this year, but I want to see him step up.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of guys for him, like Amari Akhmedov. I would say Weidman because he just had that win. Marvin Vittori, I don't know where he is, but I'm sure he's about 13 or something. I think he has a fight booked, but if he doesn't, that could be a fight for him. There's plenty of guys from 10 to 15 that would be good matchups, and the UFC kind of owe him, because he's showed up 4 times this year and just taken on whoever. He hasn't picked his opponents. He's taken on whoever they give him. So I feel like they owe him a bit of a jump in competition, a ranked guy. And hopefully he does get it, because I would like to see that. But we'll jump on to the first fight of the main card, which was Bobby Greene versus Thiago Moyeses. And a pretty competitive-esque fight. I saw Moyeses winning this. I did have it. I know there's a bit of controversy online where people did see it for Greene. But in my opinion, Moyeses landed more and looked better.
Yeah, I thought that. I didn't really see the controversy. I thought Moyeses won. And, I was picking Bobby Greene before this because I thought he was in brilliant form. And I thought it was a good back-and-forth fight, but I just think Moyeses got the better of him, and that's 2 in a row now. That's 2 really good wins for him. And whatever people say online, I don't think you can take it away from him. He's establishing himself as someone to watch in the lightweight division. I think that's what we've got a theme coming through this card, is where it's guys who are just putting themselves in contention for top 15, who are just, creeping in there, making a name for themselves. We got Holland, we got Moyeses, we got Greg Hardy and Bryce Mitchell. All guys who I expect to be making, noise in the top 15 in 2021. So he's just another guy that's a really good win, because Bobby Greene he's no easy fight, and he's been in great form. So congratulations to Thiago.
Absolutely, and I think that pretty much does that card. If you're ready to move on to the next one.
Just shout out to Alexander Hernandez. That was a great KO. He was coming back from a tough loss to Drew Dober, and then Adrian Yanez, who I think we're gonna grab an interview with him through the week. That beautiful head kick, and it was a brilliant card. It was a really good card, and as I said, lots of people to keep an eye on. As I just said, Uriah Hall might not be someone who's going to be making waves in that middleweight division, but Kevin Holland should be. And there's a load of fighters there to, I'm sure we'll be speaking about in the coming months. So, yeah, great card.
Yeah, for sure. And this weekend we have UFC Fight Night, Santos versus Teixeira, booked for the third time, if I'm correct. I think it is. I think they both got COVID one time each. So hopefully we get to see this fight now. I know it's not a number one contender fight anymore. I guess it might be in the long run, but not in any time soon. But still, we need to see who is going to be the next guy at the light heavyweight division currently for whoever wins the fight we'll talk about after. But this matchup itself is a pretty interesting fight, because you got Thiago Santos, who's super talented, like striker. He's got that capoeira style with these big spinning kicks, and he's got power in both hands. And then you got Glover Teixeira, who's more of a, I'd say, orthodox striker with he's got power as well, and he's fast, but he's not going to throw loads of spin and stuff at you and give you some weird looks. He's more standard and more battle tested, I guess. So it'll be an interesting one. What are your thoughts on this fight?
It's a really good fight. I'm hoping we get to see it. I hope nothing derails it. I think this is whoever wins this is very worthy of the next title shot. It looks like Adesanya's going to get it. But after that, I feel like the winner of this is right in line, right there. And I think it's going to be Santos. I think he's a legit, threat for the title. I think if he went in with Jan Blachowicz now, I'd fancy him to win it. I think he's that good. He's coming off a long layoff, after the... I think he tore his ACL, didn't he, against Jones, or both ACLs. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back, because he is, how old is he? 36 now. So that's a tough injury to come back. We've seen it before. But I expect him to look really good in this. I expect him to get a quick KO. Glover, I feel bad picking against him, because I picked against him in Anthony Smith, and I picked him against him quite big in Anthony Smith, and he absolutely battered Smith. So he's not someone I'm told. At the same time, he's in his 40s. He's had a lot of battles. He's been knocked out a few times. Thiago Santos is a killer. It's just all adding up for me. Santos is the next in line, I think. But I'm sure Teixeira can prove us all wrong again, because he's on a 4-fight win streak.
Yeah, I mean, Santos, the injury he had in that Jones fight was his ACL, MCL, and meniscus all in the same knee. So they should be healed up. Let's hope he doesn't go out there and then fucking smash all three of them, break them all again in one kick or something, because that'd be a shame. Then he's out for it. Even if he wins, he's out for another 8 months after that. So hopefully he's all right. But I do favour him as well in this matchup, and I think it's if you want to draw parallels to that Glover Smith fight. Smith came out there and put his hands on Teixeira and really dominated him in the first round and a half. And it looked like he was going to put him away at some points. But Teixeira was able to weather the storm, wait for Smith to gas himself out, and then just dominated the fight from there on. It wasn't even close. I don't think he can do that with Santos, because Santos isn't going to come out there with that high pace and volume. Santos is going to come out there with heavy hands, and he's going to set up his shots. And when he lands, that's it, He doesn't... I think he can probably last more than one round. I don't expect it to be a first-round KO, but I do expect Santos to find a finish within the first 3. Or I think he could probably just take it to a decision. I think he can... He seems like he's shown that he can go 5 rounds. If you look at his fight with the champion, Jan, the first time they fought, they were 3 rounds in. Both guys looked like they were conditioned to go. Obviously, Santos had a very different approach into that as he did his other fights, because in his other fights, he's been the one pushing the action. But against Jan, he was kind of waiting to counter off Jan, which actually forced Jan to start throwing, which led to Santos putting him out. I don't expect to see that from him in this fight against Teixeira. I think he's going to come forward, but I do expect him to find the finish somewhere around the 3rd round.
Yeah, it's a good fight, and Glover, for me, he surprised me to even be in this position at his age. And he, to be fair, before he started this streak, I thought he looked done. He looked on his way out, and he'd had a great career. So there's nothing to be ashamed of there. But he's had this amazing comeback, if you want to call it, and he's put 4 wins together. He lost Corey Anderson. He lost. Remember when he got knocked out by Gustafsson as well? They were big losses, and then he's managed to pull it back, and he's beat Smith, and now it's the next level. Though Thiago Santos for me is a killer. He's championship level. I think he's got everything it takes to go and beat Blachowicz again. So it's a great fight. I expect Santos to win, but Teixeira is as game as it comes, so I'm not writing him off at all.
Yeah, neither. It'll be a fun fight to watch, and I'm very excited for it. And the co-main event, somewhat underwhelming, I would say, but it's not the worst fight. It's definitely a good fight in the heavyweight division, just not between ranked guys. And that's Andre Arlovsky versus Tanaboza, which is a great step up in competition for Boza, and we'll definitely get to see what he's made of. I know Arlovsky's on a bit of a slope. I think he's won his last couple of fights, or maybe his last fight. But before that, he's definitely a shell of what he used to be. But Tanaboza is not this super heavy-handed striker. A lot of what he does is volume striking, and it'll be interesting to see if he can put that on Arlovsky like a lot of people haven't been able to do. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, first thing first, I don't like this fight as a co-main event. I think I think there's a high risk that this fight's going to be really boring. Like Arlovsky, either at the minute he tends to get knocked out inside a couple minutes, or he goes to a really quite boring decision. And I don't see both. It's the same thing as Hall and Silva. You've just got to go and steam Arlovsky. I know he's a legend and things like that, but at this point, you can't respect him in that manner. You've just got to run at him, try and take his head off, and I hope that's what Boza does and goes and secures his third knockout in a row, because otherwise we're gonna get this horrible point fight and a heavyweight, and it's gonna go to a weird split decision, and it does nothing for Tanaboza, who is starting to establish himself as a potential contender. He needs to go out, make a statement, wipe Arlovsky out, and I'm gonna pick him to do that because he's on a nice run. He's got a lot of momentum behind him. I'm gonna pick him to keep going because I don't want to be sitting up at 3-4 in the morning watching these 2-point fights. So I'm just hoping for that right now. But Arlovsky, I'm saying what I'm saying, but he's still game. I'm sure he's in his 40s now, still picking up wins against young contenders. So he's doing it right. It's just not fun to watch, and it's more fun for me to see him get beat, which is quite bad to say, but it is.
I hope for your sake one of these guys finds a finish early. But, we'll jump on to the next fight before this one, which is Middleweight Belt, which probably, in my opinion, makes more sense to be the co-main because ranked guy, But look at this. I don't understand how the UFC book their cards. You got a women's strawweight fight between 4 and 8. That's the opening fight on the main card. And then you've got that heavyweight bout. But we're not going to get into that. We've got Ian Heinisch versus Brendan Allen. Both great, talented middleweight fighters. Ian Heinisch had that slip up. Who did he lose to? I'm blanking on this. Who was his last loss?
He lost to Akhmedov.
That was it, Akhmedov.
And Brunson.
And then you've got Brendan Allen, who is coming off a win from memory against that debutant guy that was a grappler. I can't remember his name.
Dorcas.
That was it, Kyle Dorcas. Was it Kyle Dorcas?
Yeah.
And so this is a good fight for both guys. I like to see who wins this fight because it definitely, I think Heinisch is 15, so it'll determine like where the bar is to be in the top rankings of the division. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I really like it. I think we were speaking about exciting grappling matches before with Mitchell and Feely, and Allen was in an exciting grappling match with Dorcas last time. It was a really fun fight. Heinisch is coming off a big win over Meerschaert, so it's a really good fight between two people who, as I was saying earlier, you'd expect some of these guys to be making noise in 2021. I think Brendan Allen's going to get the win. I really like him. I think he's a potential contender. He's picked up a few good wins now. Tom Breeze, who I rate highly, Kevin Holland, who I rate highly. Dorcas looked great in his debut, and I think a few people fancied him in that debut as well. So really good fighter. He's starting to string it together. Ian Heinisch is probably would be the biggest name on his record, and it's up for him to go and get it. 24 years old though, he's got the world at his feet right now, and this is the toughest test. And Heinisch is, his job. He knows what his job is. He's got to knock this kid back down and back into place, and carry his trajectory up the rankings.
Yeah, I do favour Allen in this one as well. I did forget about that Meerschaert fight for Heinisch, but outside of that, he didn't look that great against Amari Akhmedov, and obviously the Brunson fight before that. I just think Allen's got more traction at the moment. I do favour him in this matchup. But yeah, should be a good fight. I think that's one of the better fights on this card. Before that, we do have the women's strawweight bout that I spoke about earlier with Claudia Gadelha versus Yan Xiaonan. That's Yan is going to be the name I say. But these are two ranked women's strawweights, and this is like for Gadelha, for Claudia, this is like an important fight for her because she's ranked number 4. I'm pretty sure she's coming off a win. I just can't recall who it was over. So another win on top of this, and she'll be ranked in the top 2 or 3 in the division. You got to imagine, right next to that title shot. Yeah,
it's a pivotal fight. I don't think any of these are going to get a title shot off the back of this, but it establishes. I think whoever wins this is probably one fight away. Mm-hmm. They've both got wins over Angela Hill. That's the name you were missing then, just who Gadelha beat. And I know there was a bit of controversy, but I think she won that fight. So I think this has been cancelled before, rebooked. It's going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to go 3 rounds. I don't see anyone getting the finish. They're going to go back and forth. It's going to be high-paced. I'll pick Gadelha just because she's been a contender for longer. I've seen her pick up significant wins over people who I think are better than Yan. So I expect her to emerge victorious. She's got to win over Carlos Esparza. I rate Carlos Esparza as, pretty much the highest level of gatekeeper you can get in that division. If you beat her, you're onto a good thing. So I expect Gadelha to win this one.
That's right. I did a little bit of looking, Googling there, and Jan's last fight was at UFC in New Zealand against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and she smashed her face in. You remember that one? That was a bad one. That was a bad knockout. Actually, it wasn't a knockout, was it? She fought with that. That's right. But it was a pretty impressive punch that she landed. I think it was a punch. It might have been a kick. But that's the last time I remember seeing her fight. And obviously, I do think Gadelha is probably the better fighter here, and she's faced the harder competition. So I do favour her in this, and I think she'll go on from this to be one fight away from title shot. But the problem at strawweight is that, we know who's fighting for the title next, don't we? It's going to be Rose. So they still got to wait for that fight to happen, and then after that, who knows? She's going to have a couple more fights before she gets her shot at the title. But, this is a pivotal fight in her career, and hopefully she does well in it. What have we got in the prelims here? I have not looked at these yet.
I don't think there's a lot to talk about on the prelims. Arnold Allen was supposed to fight Jeremy Stephens, wasn't he? But that fell through. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like they're going to be getting Allen another opponent. I think he's very adamant that he wants a ranked guy right now. He doesn't, he's not interested in fighting a debutant, as we've seen a lot of people do lately. So the campaigning for him right now to try and get Edson Barboza or get Jeremy Stephens rebooked for December. Hopefully he gets it because he's on an amazing streak. He deserves to be fighting these contenders, but for some reason he's overlooked, and it was just unfortunate that Stephens fell out. So hopefully they can get him that big name, get him that big win, and he can start making his rise towards the title, because he's a true contender, even if people across the world don't realize it yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if there's not much on that card, we'll jump straight onto news then, and we'll get on to the biggest news of the week. Probably will be the biggest news all week. Israel Adesanya, middleweight champion, moving up to light heavyweight to challenge for light heavyweight belt against Jan Blachowicz. I don't really... I think I would have preferred him to fight Jones, but, I'll take what I can get. And I think this fight is more difficult than any of the matchups at middleweight. However, I still think Israel is going to walk through this one quite easily. What are your thoughts on the fight and his move up to light heavyweight?
I like the move up. I think, with everything that's going on, Robert Whittaker beat Jared Cannonier. Robert Whittaker doesn't really seem that keen on rematching. Like, obviously he wants to rematch, but he's not in a rush. He's taking his time. He's got a baby on the way. Israel is someone who's got a lot of momentum. He's going to be the next UFC superstar if he's not already there. So why not keep it going? I think Jan Blachowicz is a very winnable fight for him. I won't make me pick until I've seen him closer to the fight, just because, it's a lot of weight that he's got to put on, and is he just gonna, not cut weight and then that's his way? I don't like that. I feel like he should be bulking up and getting to the size. And I think we've seen it when Max Holloway stepped up to fight Poirier. He was a little bit undersized, and you've got to be careful that you've got to do it correctly. And I think that's why John Jones is taking his time with heavyweight, because he wants to do it right. So I think Adesanya has just got to, do it right, and he will win. But other than that, he could get quite, bossed around the cage if he's not careful.
See, I don't think that bit. I don't see the weight being an issue at all, to be honest. And the reason for that is, if he's fighting someone like Jones, who's going to try and engage in the grappling and take him down, yes, the size is going to matter a lot. But if it's a striking battle, which I'd imagine it mostly will be between Jan and Israel, I think it will remain on the feet, a lot of it. And I think Israel's just too technical for him. I think he's going to look for counters. I think even without the extra, 10 or 15 pounds that he'd need to put on, I still think he's got the power to put Jan out. And I still think he will find a way to put Jan out without really taking a lot of damage. But I could be completely wrong, because Blachowicz has submissions on his record. He has wrestling ability. And if you're the bigger guy and you're fighting a really technical striker, surely your game plan is to grab a hold of him and take him down, right? I think that's no secret. If anyone's going to get Israel, I think most of the time, surely someone can catch him on the feet, but I think the best chance of victory against him is to take him down to somewhere he's less comfortable. We haven't seen his ground game. Maybe he's phenomenal on the ground, but he's going to be less comfortable on the ground than he is on the feet, because he hasn't spent the time there in the cage. So I think that's probably the best way for Blachowicz to go about winning this fight. Whether he does it, I don't think so. I think Israel could probably keep this one on the feet, find these counters, and put him away.
I think Blachowicz is going to want to, he's going to want to have this on the feet. I think he looked great against Reyes, where he was whacking in that body shot with the kicks, and I think he'll be doing that to try and slow Adesanya down. And then at the end of the day, he knows this guy's stepping up, and as talented as he is, Blachowicz is the biggest puncher by a million miles who Adesanya has faced. So he's thinking, this skinny guy, and that's what people call him. He's a skinny guy. Depending on how long he gets to cut, how long he gets to bulk up, is he even going to be a proper 205? I'm not sure. So Blachowicz is going to be confident. I think he's going to be confident that I can go in and land one on him and knock him out. And Adesanya is confident that he can dip out the way and land a similar shot to what Santos did and knock Blachowicz out. So I think it's a really good fight. I think it's the fight to make right now. Adesanya, it is next stop to superstardom. It's the biggest fight Blachowicz can get. It's a great fight.
My favorite thing about this fight is the fact that Israel said after it he wants the Jones fight. He said, if I get a win here, we'll do Jones versus me in Raiders Stadium or wherever it is in America he's talking about. And then, you know what? That he said it will be the biggest fight in UFC history, and I'm starting to believe it would be. Because you think about when Conor versus Khabib, maybe that's going to say the biggest fight. It'd be hard to beat that one, wouldn't it? But Israel is definitely the biggest star in the sport. I would say he's a bigger star than Conor right now, because Conor hasn't fought, If you polled 1,000 people who have started watching the UFC over the last 4 years, who the biggest star, who the most well-known fighter is, probably Conor McGregor still win, but I think Israel's a close second, right? He's really come into his own, especially with this move up. If he gets a win here, he's going to be shot to superstar. And then you've got John Jones, who everyone who's watched the sport for 10 years knows John Jones and knows what he's capable of. So I think this is a massive super fight. And my fear isn't so much that Israel loses this fight against Blachowicz. It's that John goes up to heavyweight before he instead of hanging around for Israel, and then we miss this fight entirely. But Israel seems like he wants to get this first fight against Jan done and then get straight into a Jones fight, and I'd be very happy to see that.
Yeah, it depends how he looks like. What's he going to do? Go to heavyweight? Or are they going to do a 205? There's also many questions right now, but what's certain, it looks like that we're getting that fight at 205. Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya. Worry about everything else after that, because he's got that legendary Polish power coming at him. He's got a lot to deal with already. I think it's more that he's uninterested in the middleweight division right now where it's at, because Robert Whittaker's the only contender. He's already knocked him out. If Till gets a big win, I can see Adesanya maybe changes his mind and kind of saying, "Oh, I'll go back down," because that's a really fun fight for him. But besides that, middleweight's not interesting, so he's set his attention over there. But really good fight. Hope we get it. I don't know when they're planning it, but yeah, it's gonna be a great fight.
And could you imagine if Jan Blachowicz does pull off a victory here? What does that do, not only for his own stock? Because I know a lot of people right now are saying that he might be the champion, but he's not the best 205er. John Jones has moved up, and obviously John Jones was the best 205er, and he fought Dominic Reyes for the belt, who wasn't a champion himself at the time. So there's a lot of how good is Jan? If he can beat Israel Adesanya, I know he's got the size advantage, but if he can beat a name like that, it does leaps and bounds for his legacy. And what would that do for Israel Adesanya's career? Because you look at someone like Sean O'Malley, a little bit different. Sean O'Malley was much in the building phase, but he got one loss, and then half his fans wrote him off. You still hear about him, but just nowhere near as much as before that loss. And so if Israel takes a loss there, yeah, sure, he's the middleweight champ, but what do you think it would do in terms of his stock?
I don't think it'd do much. I feel like he'd handle it well. I don't think he's going to be a bad loser, and that's part of the problem with Sean O'Malley, that he's been a bad loser. I think he lost fair and square. People have toughed out that injury, and they've won fights, worse injuries than he had, and he's just been a bad loser about it. I think Adesanya, he comes from the kickboxing background. I think he'll be gracious. He's also shooting for the stars. I like people who go for the next division and try and do these great things and win belts at multiple divisions. I feel like Adesanya's a middleweight. That's where he's best. I think he's given up a lot of his advantages by stepping up to light heavyweight. So you can only clap, people who do that. And if he gets knocked out, he's still middleweight champion. Mm-hmm. He's shot for the stars and he hasn't got there. But it's a worthwhile attempt, and I think one he can potentially do. But I don't think a loss really hurts him.
Yeah, well, I think we're all excited to see it, and we'll jump on to another piece of news, and probably the second biggest story of the week, which is Dana White says there will be no vacant lightweight title, there will be no stripping of Khabib. Khabib is remaining the champion, but he tags his comments with Conor vs. Poirier signed now, and that will happen, but not for a belt. What are your thoughts on that not being for a belt? What are your thoughts on Khabib staying the champion? Do you think he returns? I know we spoke about it before, but do you think he returns? And what implications does all this have for the lightweight?
I'm not sure. Khabib, there's a lot of time to go until there's a fair amount of time to go until Conor McGregor fights Poirier, so don't be surprised that the belt's on the line by then. I just think he's not giving I think Dana White's just not rushing it. He's not, why would you want to strip one of your biggest stars and basically force him out of the sport? Keep him sweet, bring him back. I think 30 is still very appealing. I feel like it is, but it depends who he faces. I don't think he's got an interesting fight facing McGregor or Poirier. Who are they going to match him up against? Can Tony Ferguson get a win and maybe jump the line? Can he pull GSP? It's all about opponents right now. I feel like Khabib could be swayed, but who are they going to get him against? It's not going to be McGregor. It's not going to be Poirier. And, time will tell.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one or two people, and you said them both. It's going to be Tony Ferguson or it's going to be GSP. More likely GSP, just because he wants to fight. GSP is not coming off a loss like Ferguson, and Khabib's just always wanted that fight, hasn't he? And he spoke about it with his father and stuff. I think there's a lot of history, there's a lot of build-up to that fight. And while that would be an awesome fight, I just want to see Tony fight Khabib. We've had it booked 5 times. Surely the UFC says, all right, Khabib, it's your last fight. We're going to give you Tony Ferguson. You can take it or leave it. But the fans want it. We've tried to book it. He's coming off a loss. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I just feel like even if he's coming off a loss, I still think that fight's got sellability. I still feel like he's one of the toughest opponents Khabib will have ever faced. Mm-hmm. I think he's got that jiu-jitsu threat on the ground. I think he's very talented on the mat. So even coming off a loss, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight, but obviously I think the UFC are going to want to see Tony get a win first, and they're going to match him against Chandler or someone like that. But there's no rush. Khabib's still grieving his father. He'll want some time out, so I think by next summer he might be ready to come back, and by that time things.
All right, we'll call it there. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you after the fights to recap all the action.